We are well into the year and lots is going on. First up, Beyonce is topping the country music charts. Who had that on their bingo card for 2024? And actor Tom Holland has Riz. I don't know what it is, but I hope it's curable. Anyway, it's time to go on the edge. Called the Armistead Maupin of St. Louis, Chris Andoe is the critically acclaimed author of 2 books, Delusions of Grandeur and House of Villadiva. Last year, he debuted his award-winning one-man show, The Final Performance of Midnight Annie, and has since taken that show on the road. Please welcome to the program, Chris Andoe.
Hey, Darren, thanks for having me.
Hey, buddy, how's it going?
It's going good. This year's going really well.
The year's starting out pretty cool for you?
It is.
Well, I know your past, you've always been kind of like, not necessarily involved in feuds, but kind of always adjacent or just around and covering them and whatnot. Before we get into your past, what are some of today's hot topic like feuds that are really stirring your butter?
Well, FX series Capote has really drawn a lot of attention to this kind of writing. I run a society page in the weekly paper here. Fortunately, last year I was really mired in several feuds. This year I'm not, it's pretty much over, but anyone's worst nightmare is when several people they don't get along with form an alliance. And last year was a mess, and it consumed most of my year, multiple court appearances, people come into the house. I could write a whole book, and probably will, about last year. This year really is feud-free. It's really calm, and so I've actually just enjoyed watching the past feuds on FX.
I like that you said, you're feud-free.
Feud-free.
I think we need to have that as a slogan for 2024.
Right.
Feud-free.
Yeah.
Well, with that, you started out blogging and writing little stories about controversial figures and little interactions of the community that you came across. Tell me about your humble beginnings and how you grew into your success.
Well, I started out from Tulsa and then moved to Oklahoma City and then found my way to St. Louis and moved around the country. But this place kind of pulled me back in as a writer. It reminds me of, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. This is like a bigger Savannah. Lot of through lines, a lot of characters, larger than life characters, long histories of collaboration and conflict that I really got a beat on. But it was around, I think I returned to this city, 2008, and there were so many amazing stories I was hearing that no one was touching. There was someone who was presumed dead and really wasn't. They just lived out of town, but everyone thought they were dead. I brought them back to life with a big, Facebook special, announcing that someone everyone thought was dead was really alive. There was a queen who'd been run over by 7 different men and took them to court. And it was inadmissible that it kept happening. You couldn't tell the jury that. And so this person kept getting these payouts. And so I wrote a story called Speed Bump Sally about that. And then there was the fake attorney that had everyone convinced he was an attorney, handled cases, went before the judge, didn't even go to law school, And so I get back to St. Louis, and there's just this incredible wealth of tales no one's telling, and I start telling them. And that's when I start getting attention, and then a magazine invites me to join the roster, and it all skyrocketed from there.
So, you're right. I've been in St. Louis. I love it. But, man, there's some characters in the Midwest. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, those stories actually kind of started you on your crafting for your first book, Delusions of Grandeur, which is kind of like a huge book of short stories that you can read from beginning to end very quickly. But tell me about that process and how you curated the content for that.
Yeah, so I look back and I'm kind of critical of my curation because when you're in the moment, you think everything needs to go in the book, and the further you get from it, you're like, I probably could have pared some of this down. But yeah, Delusions is designed where you can open it up in the middle and read a story from beginning to end, and it stands alone. but it works even better when you read it as a novel. But it is my own story about everything we're talking about. About my discovery of St. Louis and all these characters and my interactions and all the backstories and feuds. So Delusions has so much of that.
I remember when that came out, and you were pretty much on the Amazon bestseller LGBTQ plus list for quite some time. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
That's amazing. And then you go into your second book, which is kind of the same, but much more of a novel aspect to it. Tell me about that and why you chose to go with a little bit of a different direction.
Yeah, so Villa Diva is a little bit more of a traditional style that you really do need to start from the beginning to understand it. I think it's a little calmer than Delusions, but people like the different ones for different reasons. But yeah, so Villa Diva is pretty much just a continuation, but I did design it where you do not have to read Delusions. You can open it up and I catch you up to speed. And so if you start with that one, you can, and then you might get curious and go back. But it's a lot of just my life and my journey, and it follows me back to San Francisco, the collapse of my marriage, going to New York and being just totally lost. I went to New York to recover from the collapse of my marriage, and New York's not a place you go to lick your wounds and recover. You got to come out guns blazing in New York. And so New York chewed me up and spat me out pretty quickly. And that's when I decided, to return to St. Louis to finish the first book. So what's kind of fun about Villa Diva is it talks about all that went into making the first book, all the fallout from that, all the backstory. So they really play on that for the second one.
I know through both of your books, one of the things I think I've always thought you're one of my favorite wordsmiths, but you love to take a person's name and change it, which is legally great to do.
Right.
You're not chased after. But tell me a little bit about those names, because you have some like Shasta Light, but she was really like Crystal Diet something. Like, how did that happen? What's up with that?
So in Villa Diva, I really didn't change very many at all, but in Delusions, it was a requirement. And I made a game of how thinly veiled I could make it. And so, for instance, the man who pretended to be an attorney and went to prison for that, Dustin Mitchell, in the first book, he's Rustin Winchell. So it's just kind of a fun game. I would just be an Henri. What's the minimum I can do? You
had one that was like talking about like butter or oil. Who was that again? I forget.
There was a drag queen. She's still around. Goes by Butterscotch, and I was feuding with her at the time, and I named her Margarine Schnapps.
You do come up with some crazy things.
Well, in Oklahoma, everyone has nicknames, so that's one. There's a few things. There's the accent that I take from Oklahoma, but then also that's kind of a thing down there, is everyone has a nickname.
You took both of those books, and you have currently created this new one-man live show that you did, and I think you featured it at the Fringe Festival in St. Louis or something like that.
Yes, I did.
How's that experience? Like, tell me about the show.
So I started off as an oral storyteller long before I ever had written anything down. At parties, friends would come to me and say, "Oh, tell the time this happened." I was the one responsible for sharing our group's stories. And so I was approached by Matthew Kearns over St. Louis Fringe, and he said, I want to produce a one-man show of your stories. And so I worked with him for 6 months, writing this out and rehearsing it. And it's basically my life from before I'm born, to today, pretty much. And it was a really interesting process. It really goes into my family dynamics and all that, but a lot of really fun, humorous parts to it for sure.
So that debuted when? Last year? Was it last year or?
Summer of last year.
Okay. Yeah. And what next with that?
So my last stop on it was Oklahoma City at their big gay hotel, the District. That was a really great time because I'm going back to my roots, and the audience was kind of like a comedy club audience. They were just rolling. So that was really great. And so now we're trying to get to Chicago and Palm Springs. I really have a strong following of older guys because of my campy humor and irreverent, that goes back to old school camp and what our culture was, kind of this lost culture. And it's kind of a joke that all the older gays are my fans, and I welcome it. I love it. I turned 50 in December, so I'm right there with them.
There is kind of a difference right now. I've been noticing a lot, specifically through social media. Our generation, yes, we grew up in an era where, we called each other bad names, but it was in loving terms of endearment.
Sure.
Today, you cannot do that. You cannot do that. How do you feel about the dynamical change of our society?
The culture, so we were an irreverent culture, and that's kind of the root of gay camp. But because gay, lesbian, bisexual, we were on the outside of society. We were not welcomed into society. It gave us license to mock everything. And so our irreverent humor was like mocking religion, and people would clutch their pearls. We just had license to do it. And that was the origins of everything. And the culture has turned on its head, where it went from irreverent to hyper-reverent. So you have to be very, very careful in general now, as opposed to how loose we were back then.
Well, I know you have a lot of success coming ahead of you, because you are one of the best storytellers and writers I've ever come across in life. Everyone, you can always follow Chris Andoe on all the social media platforms under Chris Andoe. But he also has his own website, which he'll continue to update to let you know when his show is performing in your town at chrisandoe.com. Chris, thank you so much for taking time to chat with us on The Edge. Much success this year, buddy. Can't wait to see what happens next.
All right. Thanks, Darren.
Thank you. And everybody, thank you for tuning into today's program. Always check out Edge Media Network on our social media platforms, and we have daily queer content on our website, edgemedianetwork.com. We'll see you next time.